everybody. Welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo, episode number 97. Tonight we got our 2019 MLB season kickoff. We are so happy to be back after a little bit of a February hiatus there, a little bit of a midwinter break. Baseball and spring are right around the corner. And we are delighted tonight to have a special guest. I believe this is his fifth time on the show. From Super 70 Sports, we'd like to welcome our good buddy, Ricky Cobb. Ricky, how the hell are you, man?
And I am great. Thank you guys so much for having me back on. It's something I look forward to every year. I can't believe it's been 5 years. And, you know, hey, man, I circle it on my calendar every March. No doubt about it.
Absolutely. Well, you're our one of our favorite guests, and we absolutely are just in love with Super 70 Sports. I kid you not, Ricky, man. When I'm having a shitty day, I pop that thing on, and I'm in a better place. So
well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say that's why I do it. I do it for money and stuff like that too.
Right. No worries, man. Dollar bills, man.
Besides making some money, yeah, it's pretty nice for you to say that. Thank you. I'm going for entertainment, so if I'm somewhere close to the target, that's cool. Thank you.
I decided the other night that, and I'm not blowing smoke here, but literally, if I could only follow one Twitter account, it would be Super 70 Sports.
Thank you.
No doubt.
I'm flattered. I don't deserve that, but I thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and Ricky, this is your fifth time, and I think when we were chatting before we started recording, Levi had mentioned, Saturday Night Live, they give like a robe or something like that, So we're working on pooling all of the petty cash within Rock and Roll Shin-Soo to get you a 1976 satin Tampa Bay Buccaneers jacket. Okay, so we're working on it. All right, the budget's thin around here, but we're working on it.
I thought just being on the show was its own reward. Not. This is fantastic, and this is on video now. So you're stuck with that play.
Right,
I think we're legally bound. Yeah.
Yes. I haven't consulted with an attorney, but there has to be some sort of implied contract now.
Right. Just don't look at the label. It might not be starter. It might be, martyr or barter or something. But,
hey, listen, anyway. I'm not above wearing a sweatshop Tampa Bay Buccaneers bathrobe. Okay, that's right up my alley.
Has there ever been a worse uniform transition going from that just gorgeous,
creamsicle.
Orange, red, creamsicle. Yeah, there we go. To that weird mid-90s. What? Yeah. No.
Yeah, and then they took that helmet and made it even more obnoxious because now the flag takes up almost the whole.
It keeps getting bigger.
Right.
Like pretty soon they'll just mount an actual flag on the side. It'll come off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kid from Adventures in Babysitting's helmet, whatever it was.
That's the next step. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you guys follow me, so you know that there are a lot of jerseys out there that I currently consider to be big downgrades from what teams once had. And teams, they're stubborn. I'm excited. Apparently the Padres are going to go back to brown next year.
Next year, yeah.
That's a big victory for us old school uniform fans.
Yeah. That's worth 12 wins right there at least, Yeah.
Yeah, that's the real wins above replacement. You get that brown on it.
Right.
Look out, Mike Trout, second place.
Right.
Is that the one jersey you'd bring back if you could, or is there one that would top it?
If I could bring back anything, I would bring back the Astros stripes.
Yeah.
The rainbow, tequila sunrise, whatever you want to call it. That would be the one that I would bring back. I'd probably bring back the Expos jerseys first, just simply because that would mean the Expos were coming.
Right.
But oh my God, yeah, no, that's a different show for another day because I'm going to hijack your show with 50 minutes of ranting about 40-year-old uniforms. I'll stop now.
We devoted an episode. I think, guys, we did a uniform episode once, right?
Sure.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe we did. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But talking about kind of some of the stuff you've been up to, Ricky. I was excited when I couldn't say I went and I opened the Tribune. I pulled it up on my laptop. Right. Haven't really picked up the print copy in a while. But anyway, I saw that, the Tribune had a write-up on Super 70 Sports, man. Can you kind of tell us how that came about, man? Did they just reach out, or was it somebody you knew? Yeah.
Yeah, no, they just reached out to me and pitched it as an idea, and obviously I was happy to do it, and didn't really anticipate that it was going to be as big of a feature as it turned out to be. I think they put something like 14 of my tweets embedded in the online version of it, and they even put a few tweets in the Trib itself. So
awesome.
I was very, very thrilled, and Chris, the guy who wrote the piece, was so wonderful to work with, and really tried to get it right. I think he really wanted to tell my story and make it a really good piece, and so I really have to thank him a lot for that. But yeah, it was also the first time that I picked up the Trib in a while, if I'm being honest with you. I go probably on a solid 5-year run of not buying the Trib, and then I walk into 7-Eleven and walk out with a stack of like a dozen of them, because I figure I'll need them sooner or later to give to my kids, or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, it was really, really cool, and I was delighted that they did that. It was especially nice it being the hometown paper.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. It was a delight to read, man. And also in other periodicals, you've been doing some features for Golf Magazine, right?
I have, yeah. Actually, Golf Magazine reached out to me probably late last year and pitched the idea of having me do a feature monthly in the magazine. And so I believe the March edition is on newsstands now. No, actually the April edition is on newsstands now, and that has my third column in there. So they're out there circulating now, and I was actually in a Barnes & Noble a few days ago with my daughter, and I went and pulled it up and looked at it, and a magazine that I've been reading since I was a kid. So that's cool. Neat, something about being in print is, for an old fogey like me, there's something about being in print. Even though I don't consume nearly as much print media as I used to, there's still something just, you feel like you've accomplished something when it's on paper.
I agree.
So that's been a lot of fun working with Golf Magazine.
It feels more tangible, you know what I mean, when it's just in print like that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, congrats on those, man. Exciting stuff. And then, we keep checking in a little bit about the 70s baseball book. Is that sort of still in development? Kind of just still writing away on it, or is it going to see the light of day sometime? For what you can reveal, at least.
What I can reveal is that progress on the book is slow, or there would have been a book by now. It's still in the pipeline, but honestly, the truest answer I can give you is that Super 70s has grown so much over the last 2 or 3 years that the time that I would have been investing in writing the book is now invested in all the other parts of Super 70s that at the time I conceived the book weren't really a thing yet.
Right.
But Super 70s and writing for the magazine, those things take up a lot of time. But I'm definitely continuing forward with plans for the book, and hopefully within a couple of years that'll finally see the light of day. But I put in too much time already to just quit on it. So it's going to happen, but it's just taking its time.
Cool, man. Well, we look forward to that as well, and it's exciting, and it's good to be busy with fun stuff, man. I mean, absolutely.
It is. It's a nice problem to have. I inadvertently created a second job for myself, so I don't know how smart I am really, but
Right.
I put in a lot of time. People say, how much time do you put in? And I say, well, just double my day job.
Sure.
Because it really has become that. But it's nice. I'm working on having some apparel ready to put out, some Super 70 Sports branded apparel that hopefully will be getting out there within the next couple of months as well. So there's a lot of irons in the fire and no complaints because
Nice.
it's an adventure for sure.
Ricky, if somehow you can resurrect, and I don't know, maybe they still make them, the cartoon caricature head baseball player shirts. I know those are kind of maybe more of an '80s thing, but if you could weave those in, I mean, I don't know if they're still making those. Do you guys know if they're still making those for newer
I don't
players?
think so.
Okay,
I had a
they
Clemens
should.
one. Did
Yeah.
you guys have them?
I had Canseco.
I had a Sandberg one.
I had
Okay.
Ozzie Smith.
Oh, all right. I remember the Wizard
I
one.
don't know why, but I had Ozzie Smith.
Yeah.
I may have had a Mark Grace one as well.
I actually had Bo Jackson's too.
Okay.
Yeah. You did have a Mark Grace one. I remember that, Levi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think you had a Mark Grace black T-shirt, like the late '80s black T-shirt. No offense, Levi, it was ugly as hell. All right. But yeah, looking back on it, is the black '80s T-shirt with the thick graphics. But I remember that. Yeah. So anyway, so before we get into baseball in 2019, we've got a few kind of '70s themed questions for Ricky here that I'm going to bounce off of him. Is there as you're studying, you lived through it, and then you're studying, '70s ball players, and you've had a chance to interview a good handful of them for your podcast. Is there a player out there that you wish more people appreciated? Somebody who might not be a household name, a Hall of Famer, or somebody who is just underappreciated that you wish was had a little more of a presence in the canon of '70s players.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. There are a lot of guys that I think are underappreciated because some of the guys that are appreciated, and rightfully so, they just kind of dominate people's memories. Reggie Jackson and Pete Rose and Johnny Bench and these sorts of names. And obviously, no questioning, they deserve the place that they occupy in baseball history. But sometimes we do tend to gloss over the guys who were very, very good, right? So there are a lot of guys. A couple of names that come to mind for me right away when you say that. I think a guy like Dwight Evans is very underappreciated. If you look at his numbers, you could make a very good case that he should be a Hall of Famer. I would say another underappreciated player from the late '70s would be Ken Singleton, who sort of possessed a skill set that didn't really become as in vogue until this century. High on base percentage guy, drew a lot of walks. A lot of the guys that I would say are underrated without being able to give you all the names off the top of my head. I would say many of the underrated guys were guys who drew a lot of walks, lower batting average guys. I'll give you one more. Bobby Grich is very, very underappreciated. You could argue that Bobby Grich could be the most underrated player of the '70s. And he's a guy who got a very, very, very minimal Hall of Fame support when he was being voted on by the writers. But if you look at his WAR, it compares favorably with many, 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 many Hall of Famers. And I actually had an opportunity to interview Bobby Grich for the book a couple of years ago, and I rattled off some of the names to him that his career WAR, guys that his WAR was higher than, and he had genuine surprise himself. He didn't realize how well he stacked up with some big names. If you ever want to look into how good Bobby Grich was, just look at his WAR. Go to Baseball Reference, look at his WAR, and see how it compares to a lot of much more famous players from that era. So even though it wasn't the first name that I gave you, I would say probably the best answer for me would be Bob Grich.
Oh, good inclusion. I'm going to throw one in, guys, if I might. And I've I've lauded him on this show before when we've talked about underrated players and people that I think should be in the Hall of Fame. He is more known as an 80s player, but he started playing in 1973 for the White Sox. Brian Downing is a guy that I think should really be in the conversation more. I think because if you look at his 1979 season, he hit 326, on base percentage of 418. And then obviously in the 80s when he was in the Angels, his numbers were really solid. But he was always a guy, I don't know, Ricky, if obviously the player, but knowing much about him, he's always a guy that I thought was under. Also considering that he was a catcher, and I think he played catch. He was a catcher for most of his career. Maybe he DH'd a little bit in the 80s. Played until he was like 41. I'd really like to see Brian Downing in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Downing was a guy that, again, he falls into that category of guys who were high on base percentage guys in an era where the media focused so much on batting average.
Yeah,
and you happened to hit 265, but you drew 100 walks. The 100 walks kind of got buried. Whereas today we're more focused on OPS and things like that. And so if you're walking a lot, I think people understand now a walk is as good as a single in many cases.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, Downing, here's my Brian Downing
Tell
story.
that to my Little League coach. Jesus. I was a walk machine.
I would say that my Brian Downing story doesn't involve Brian Downing directly, but about 20-some years ago, I was collecting autographs via mail. And so there was this baseball address book that was produced by a guy named Jack Smalling, and I ordered it out of Street and Smith's or something, and so you got this book with like all the addresses of these guys. This is back in the 90s, and so I wrote Brian Downing a letter, among many others, back in the days when I was collecting, and somehow or another I copied down the wrong line, and I accidentally sent my Brian Downing baseball card to Al Downing, who gave up Hank Aaron's 715th homer. And so Al Downing, I would have never known that I copied the wrong address down, but Al Downing writes me back, sends me back my Brian Downing card, includes a note that says, "You've reached the wrong Downing. I would suggest contacting the California Angels to find Brian's address," and he included a signed card of himself. And so that turned into an accidental brush with Al Downing. So yeah,
those Downings are class acts. I tell you.
Another thing, yeah, they are. And another thing about Brian Downing, and I don't want to throw a damper on your pro Brian Downing position.
Oh, no worries.
He was one of the early guys that some people speculate could have been one of the grandfathers of steroids. Far be it. I mean, I have no. I'm sure he's probably an innocent man, but he was one of those guys.
I'd like to think so.
At a minimum, he was one of those guys that was, really into weightlifting and that kind of stuff early on. And he was one of the first guys, that really had like the guns back in that era. Because you look at the guys in the 70s and 80s, and they were scrawny. Even the guys thought were imposing at the time don't look all that buff, by today's standards.
Yeah, Downing was a pretty bulky dude. I remember the baseball cards I've got kind of running through my brain right now, and he was pretty bulky. Yeah.
Speaking of steroids, I was looking up Bobby Grish's numbers, and sure enough, he ranks 60th all time in WAR. The only guys ahead of him in WAR not in the Hall of Fame are mainly like steroid guys, Rafael Palmeiro, but otherwise it's Derek Jeter's ahead of him, and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, obviously. Larry Walker, borderline. Lou Whitaker, borderline. Pete Rose, he's got other issues. So, and that's it. Like, everybody else is in the Hall of Fame. And but Bobby Grich is ahead of guys like Johnny Mize, Alan Trammell, Ron Santo, Barry Larkin, Gary Carter, Tony Gwynn. It goes on.
Damn.
Bobby Grich was
remarkable. It really it surprised me when I was first looking at that, and it's hard to wrap your mind around it. And obviously, WAR should not be taken as the end all be all.
But it helps across generations.
It's just very instructive. If you're in the same conversation as Tony Gwynn, that's high praise, right? So it provides some context, and Harold Baines, God bless him, excellent player, and I never want to be the guy that craps on anybody being honored, but Harold Baines, there's, if you look at his career WAR, he's probably something like 30 WAR or below Bobby Grich.
He's at 38.7, which ranks 351st.
Yeah, it's just not even close. And Lou Whitaker, who you mentioned, who's another primarily 80s guy, but Lou Whitaker is pretty much in the same boat as Bobby Grich. Yeah. They took one or two looks at him, and he was off the ballot, and that was it. And if you look at Lou Whitaker's WAR, it also compares very, very favorably to a lot of very famous guys that not only are in the Hall of Fame, but that seem like they're solidly in the Hall of Fame in some cases.
He's ahead of Frank Thomas and Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Lou Whitaker has a higher career WAR than Frank Thomas and Reggie Jackson. I'm not suggesting that he was better than them, but if there's a metric, a legitimate metric that suggests that he certainly deserved more than 5% or whatever he got, less than 5% that he got when he was on the ballot. So
if the Veterans Committee is going to put in Jack Morris, they got to put in Lou Whitaker, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he would be a better choice. Same thing. And Lee Smith, who I've met and is a very, very nice man. And if you're going to be putting relief pitchers in the Hall of Fame, Lee Smith would be on the short list of guys who are most deserving. But again, is Lee Smith a more qualified Hall of Famer than Dale Murphy or Dave Parker or Tommy John or Jim Cott? There's a lot of guys that have a good claim on going into the Hall, especially when you're inducting guys like Baines and Lee Smith. There's many players that are in the 40s and in the 50s for WAR that those kind of decisions start bringing them into the conversation.
Yeah, a lot of those guys they played during the wrong era. In terms of how favorably WAR is viewed. I don't know when WAR started anyway. Like it's relatively recent, right?
Yeah, it goes back a while, but far after those guys played, and yeah, it's almost like we need. But once opinions are once they crystallize and whatever, it's hard for a lot of people to revisit because they think, well, and I'm an old guy like that too. It took me a while to sort of re-examine my perception, particularly of some of these guys who played key defensive positions. Right. Bobby Grich, to me, when I was a kid, didn't feel like a Hall of Famer. Alan Trammell didn't feel like a Hall of Famer to me, but I think that I've understood in adulthood that was a problem with what I felt was a Hall of Famer. It wasn't a problem. It wasn't a problem with their value. And so, we've made a lot of strides in how we view the relative qualities of these players compared to when I was a kid. And I think some of these guys like Grich and Whitaker and other names that you were mentioning, they really deserve a second reckoning, because I think history got the narrative wrong the first time.
Agreed.
Yeah, good. Well put. One more 70s question, and then we'll kind of move on to today. Jonathan was kind enough to craft these. Is there a 170s player that you could transport in today's game? Who would that be? Like, if you could just take one dude in his prime, put him in 2019, he'd be refreshing for baseball. Who do you think that would be?
Is this just for my own entertainment?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll tell you what I would do. I want to see 1970s Nolan Ryan, and I want to see how many people he would strike out in this era where everybody's swinging for the fences. And I want to see what the modern radar guns clock him at as well. Because I promise you, whatever they were saying he was throwing it in the 70s was not doing him justice, because the technology was behind his arm. So I would love to see Nolan Ryan. If I could have a second choice, I'd be interested in bringing back maybe some of these speed demons from the 70s, to see if we could interject a little bit of small ball back into the game. Even if I got to go into the 1980s, it would be fun to see somebody like Vince Coleman. Right. Although the truth is they probably put the brakes on him and take half of the fun out of it. But
sure,
I miss those 90 and 100 stolen base guys. You wonder. Everything seems like it's cyclical, but you wonder if that'll ever come back again.
Yeah, not a lot of dudes cross that threshold anymore of more than 60 bags. That would be a lot.
That's a lot by today's.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Podsednik had like 84 that one year on the Brewers, and that was high. That was really high. I gotta go off, John.
That's a ton. I think anytime somebody gets past 50 now,
it's going to lead the league. Yeah,
that's a lot. But it was kind of that way back in the 1950s. As well, and so right now the pendulum has definitely swung towards just get on base and hit homers, and you wonder if it'll swing back. Maybe given enough time.
The Royals are giving it a go this year, putting a bunch of speedsters on their team. Let's bring back Willie Wilson. Put him back on the Royals.
Let's bring back nice. Willie Wilson. He was a great man, especially those guys. They were so much fun because a lot of them, Willie included, were playing on turf. And so they would just squirt those ground balls into the gap, and they could run all day, So you had those guys like Willie Wilson who were getting 15 triples a year. It was a fun brand of baseball. I know it's cliche to be the older guy who says, well, the game was so much more fun to watch. I don't necessarily think the players were better when I was a kid, but I think the strategy of the game just was a little more interesting and diverse, where today it seems like it's home runs and strikeouts.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you're going to get, and I miss the aesthetics of baseball in the 70s and 80s for sure. Even the 90s for that matter, the first half of the 90s at least.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey Gabe, can we ask the question number 6? Levi just put that in there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Levi, go ahead, man. You let it rip.
Oh, yeah. I said, what would be your favorite 70s or 80s athlete or sports personalities TV show appearance? Because there was a lot of guest appearances by sports people on shows back in the day.
That's a great question. I'll start with a kind of an underrated one, which was George Foreman was on Sanford and Son.
Nice.
Back in the 70s.
Of course he was. Oh, yeah.
And what I remember is I just remember that something happened. Fred made him mad or something happened, and George punched a hole in the wall, and then he hurt his hand, and so he couldn't have this big fight or whatever.
Oh, you big dummy.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I remember that one when I was a kid. I thought it was pretty neat that George Foreman was on Sanford and Son. The Brady Bunch ones are iconic, so
Namath.
Probably Joe Namath is number one. I think probably for me it would be Joe Namath coming and hanging out with the Bradys and playing football with Bobby and all that kind of stuff.
Bobby makes him think he's sick. Goddamn little brat, Bobby.
I'm jealous, this kid, and poor Joe Namath, right, who's got the worst knees, even by that time, by the early 70s. God bless Joe Namath, okay, because this guy's he's in his 70s now. His knees have been, I know they've probably both been replaced at least once, because his knees were gone. He was pretty much bone-on-bone arthritic in the 1970s. And it's just his luck that he goes and visits the one family in America that has an AstroTurf yard. Right? He couldn't even catch a break on that one. But I had Barry Williams on my podcast last year, and he talked about that. Obviously, I had to ask him, if you got Greg Brady on, you've got to ask about Joe Namath being on the Brady Bunch. And he said that Namath was a really nice guy and, was great to work with. And, he still sees him occasionally, and Joe, recognizes him, and they'll talk about it. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Right on.
Good stuff, man. I'll do a question that kind of segues to 2019. There was a story that broke. You guys probably heard about it a couple days ago about Carlos Santana, the player, not the guitarist. I guess through a shit fit. I guess he played for the Phillies last year. He's back on Cleveland now. Played for the Phillies last year, and I guess dudes were playing a video game like Fortnite, which I guess is really popular, in the clubhouse, and Oye Como Va just lost his shit and took a baseball bat to the PlayStation or whatever it was, and then earlier
he was upset that the teammates were playing games after they had been eliminated, right?
Right, yeah. The Phillies, kind of were started strong and then
they made a run,
cooled off, quite a bit. But and then also, there was even rumors that like David Price went on the disabled list last year because of carpal tunnel with playing Fortnite, like holding the controller, So Ricky, I want to ask you, what is your favorite baseball video game of all time? Or even like if you want to go completely analog and do one of the handheld, the 70s, spring activated
Mattel
game.
Baseball.
Yeah. It doesn't even have to be electronic, I guess.
Yeah.
Starting lineup.
What's your best? Yeah. What's your favorite baseball entertainment game? Outside of the sport itself.
Well, if we're talking about just my favorite baseball entertainment game, I'm going to really date myself as an old.
I know where you're going.
I'm going to go with APA. Was the game when I played Stratomatic as well. Stratomatic is a great game. So anybody that wants to say Stratomatic or APA,
I thought you were going to say Stratomatic.
I'm an old school, tabletop gamer, and it just so happened that APA was the one that I adopted because my friend's friend was an APA player, and then my friend had APA, and it's like, hey, what's this? And you roll the dice and the card, and you're hooked. And I think for a lot of us, it's APA or Stratomatic or whatever you played. It was just whatever you were exposed to first, right? And that kind of became your game. And so that was one. I would say Mattel Baseball for sure. The handheld, the red blips, and whatever. I played that for many, many hours. Going into the 80s, I like RBI Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought was a really fun one with the fat little chunky guys or whatever.
Right.
That was a good one. And now I've been dabbling. I just got a PS4 this year, and I'm not a big video game guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife and I got a system, and I've been playing MLB The Show.
Oh, okay.
Graphics are, I don't know if you guys have played that one, but the graphics are ridiculous. It's just silly how good these things have gotten since I was a kid. And so I play that one a little bit. I played some with my daughter this past weekend. And so, what the kids have today is obviously incredible compared to what was passing for fun for me when I was a kid in terms of electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, RBI was a classic. I spent a lot of hours playing the black Tengen cartridge version. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the 8-bit Nintendo, like some of those black cartridges? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Levi was a real aristocrat when it came to 8-bit gaming. All right. Yeah.
There was a Little League baseball game, like a authorized licensed Little League baseball game for 8-bit Nintendo, and it was pretty good too.
Sean Burrows on the cover.
I'll go baseball star, like the big ones. Obviously, you got RBI, baseball stars, and bases loaded. I'll go with baseball stars personally. It doesn't have any MLB connection. Obviously, neither is bases loaded, but that one I like. And then I've mentioned it before, but Ricky, I'm not sure if you're familiar. Like the last baseball game that Electronic Arts produced was in like the mid-aughts. Baseball, it's MLB or MVP 2005, right? And so there's a community of people online keeping the game alive with updated rosters every year.
Yeah, 14 years later.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people with some incredible amounts of time on their hands, all right? Because they've updated the stadiums. They've even gone. You can do retro. I mean, you can play a full season as the '84 Cubs if you want to. I mean, it's just everybody's playing it on a PC, so the memory is you've got plenty of hard drive space, so you can download 500 teams or whatever it is. But yeah, and it's pretty crazy, man. Just check it out on YouTube or
that's
something.
Remarkable. I got to respect that kind of passion.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another one that I forgot that I'll mention that I enjoyed. Back in the 1980s, when I had an Apple computer, I liked micro league baseball. That may be before your time, young fellas, but micro league baseball was pretty cool. You go back around 1984, 85.
Yeah, it was for like an Apple II.
Yeah, it was for an Apple II.
I think my library had that.
Yeah. That's crazy, right? But yeah, I mean 35 years ago, that was good times.
Nice.
Did you guys know that they still make Stratomatic?
Oh,
still going, huh? All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I might have to get this because I've been thinking about getting like the 1989 version.
Yeah, you wonder eventually if it's all of us that like that stuff, we're going to die out, right? Because it's just you're a dinosaur if you're playing these tabletop games. But I still play APA. There's a computer version of it called National Pastime 3, and it basically it's APA just kind of juiced up a little bit. The guy got under the hood and added some features and things like that. And so I play it on my computer and it keeps the statistics for me, but you can roll your own dice, and you just enter the number and the cards come up digitally. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. But yeah, I still play it from time to time.
Awesome.
Nice. Excellent. Well, you know what? Let's we'll move into the now for 2019. Actually, God, as of this recording, there's already been one official game played this season, right? There was a game in Tokyo today.
They're getting ready to play the next one here in a few hours. No.
Wow. The season. I have gosh, I don't want to open too much of a Pandora's box here, but I have mixed emotions about these this staggered opening day, if you will. It's weird, and I don't know, Ricky, just call me a traditionalist, but I think every team should start on the same day.
I agree with that. I remember when the Reds used to be the ceremonial first.
Right. Or that.
Yeah. And that was as of just like a few years ago, right?
Yeah, and I understand what they're doing as far as the international stuff, and they've been doing it for quite a while now. I mean, I think they opened in Japan like 19 or 20 years ago as well for the first time. But I think the big news, the big takeaway from those Japan games is Ichiro set back his Hall of Fame clock by a year.
Yeah, another 5 years. Yeah.
That's basically what happened. Is he's going to have to wait around for another year to get in the Hall now because of the fact that he's playing in this series.
Yeah, he had a hell of a throw too. Like he gunned down a guy from right to third as well. I think 2 days ago. It's just old boy still got it. But anyway, anything you guys are looking forward to, particularly as we approach the start of the 2019 season? Any storylines that stand out to you, or anything you're just excited about for baseball this year?
I'm gonna say Shohei Ohtani for the second year in a row, even though it's in a limited role when he comes back from he's had the Tommy John surgery, but he can still be a DH this year at some point. I don't think he'll be starting the season.
I think he's gonna miss April, but like they're gonna bring him as a DH in May, I think, around there, something like that. Yeah, no, that guy's a lot of fun to watch. I got to see him pitch in person last year, which was pretty awesome.
You saw the game he was injured, right?
The game he was injured, yeah. It was weird. I had a conference in Anaheim, and fortunately right by the park, so I got to go to the game that night. And I have two small children, so it was like the first game I actually got to watch like the whole game, in 5 years for going to the park. And it was weird. I didn't know what had happened. Like he pitched 4 innings and gave up a run, so he was doing okay. And they don't really announce injuries over the PA systems, and it was between innings when they took him out. But yeah, it was so cool to see. I mean, he's really exciting.
An event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stadium.
Yeah. Gosh, I as far as for me this year, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the NL Central pans out. We'll talk a little bit about it when we get into the divisions, but I am that is just by far, well, not by far, but it's
very competitive.
It's the number one division. I think that's the most competitive division. That's for sure.
NL East is pretty good, but
NL East as well, and So I'm excited about that. I keep hearing, not two teams I pay close attention to, but that the Pirates and the Reds are improved, particularly the Reds. So I think that'll be exciting to watch. Yeah.
I think it's going to be neat to see how your Eloy Jimenez, is it Jimenez?
Oh, yeah, Jimenez, yeah.
Yeah, the guy that you got from the Cubs.
Oh, yeah.
You guys just paid him a bunch of money today, so it'll be interesting to see how he pans out.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I mean, we had basically like the minor league position player and pitcher of the year, like the two best guys in the minor leagues last year, that we got from the Cubs. Thank you very much, Levi. So yeah, I think we got the better end of that Quintana trade there, Levi, but it's still early. But yeah. So that's exciting as well. White Sox obviously are still a year or two away, but it's looking promising. So.
New faces and new places. Yasiel Puig is a Red. That'll be fun.
Yeah, weird to see him in a small market uniform. Looks odd, but yeah.
Paul Goldschmidt as a Cardinal.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Yeah.
I always liked him until now. I'm interested in seeing how Bryce Harper does in Philadelphia, and how Machado does in San Diego. Anytime somebody gets a contract that large, it's always interesting to see how they're going to respond to that and how they're going to get adopted by the local fans. I mean, I'm sure the fans in both those places, there's going to be a honeymoon period for sure with the contract.
In Philly, very short.
Well, yeah, right. Philly doesn't do honeymoons like other cities.
They'll give him about a week and a half.
Yeah. He'll go over 7.
To be very harmonious. But yeah, I'm interested to see that, and I'm interested. And I'm going to tell you guys, I stopped playing fantasy baseball this past offseason, so I've probably followed things more casually this offseason than I have in a number of years. So I don't even know what Toronto's plans are for this guy this year, but I'm super excited to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because this guy, to me, looks like he could be the best hitter that's come out of the minor leagues in a generation. I mean, just ridiculous. He's as great as his dad was. I think that this could very well be the first father-son Hall of Fame combination, 25 years from now. We could be seeing he's something special. So I'm really excited to see what he can do whenever he gets in the lineup. I don't know if are they planning to break with him, or is it one of those things where he's got to artificially stay in the minors longer so that they can keep him for another year?
They were gonna do that, it sounded like, but then he pulled a hammy or something.
Right.
And
so
now he's hurt. So that's their excuse now to.
Well, that worked out well for them.
Yeah.
But it's a Chris Bryant situation, I mean, this guy was born to hit, and he's a baby, but my God, this guy can just rake.
And he doesn't have the same build as his dad, right? Because Vlad was tall and slender and just a rail, but Vlad
thicker for sure. Yeah, and he'll take a walk. He doesn't strike out as much, probably as his dad did. I don't think he will. I could be mistaken about that, but I don't know if Vlad struck out a ton. But Vlad was a guy that was that unusual guy, Vlad Sr., because he would chase pitches out of the strike zone and so forth, but he was so good, he would hit them, So even though he had poor plate discipline, I don't think his strikeout numbers were all that bad. But I think the kid could be better. I know that's easy to say, when somebody hasn't played in a major league game yet and whatever. And if I'm wrong, whatever. Nobody's going to remember this 20 years from now anyway, right?
But speaking to that, sorry, real quick, we have to mention, if we were talking about Vlad swinging away, you have to mention how he managed to dig one out of the dirt and light it into the outfield. When he swung and hit a pitch that was bounced home.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Mere thought that his kid could be better than him is ridiculous, because Vlad was one of a kind talent. That kind of stuff. You don't see guys. People will say that, he 9-ironed that one, or whatever, but they don't literally mean it. And in his case, that's basically what he did, right? He looked
tomahawk him. Yeah.
Oh, it was a chip, man. Right. Yeah. Also, no batting gloves on Vlad as well, right? Wasn't he?
Really? I think that's right.
Yeah, I want to say he did not wear batting gloves, or at least most of his career he didn't.
I believe you're right.
So my hat tip to anybody that's doing that.
Absolutely.
Not many these days, right?
I can confirm there are no batting gloves in Vlad Guerrero's image results search.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Just points for that. Yeah.
Junior does wear gloves though.
Yep.
Future's uncertain.
I got a
Yeah.
Yep.
Ricky, you mentioned before we get into the divisions, you mentioned you're not playing fantasy this year, and I stopped a couple of years ago as well, because some of it is kind of taking the fun out of being a fan. Somebody on the radio, I believe, was mentioning this the other day. Every fan is now thinking like a general manager. Whereas you're like, oh, I don't want my team to spend money on that guy because it's a lot of money, or they're thinking about, oh, we'll just we'll tank for a few years and amass prospects. And maybe I'm doing a poor job of articulating this, but I stepped away from fantasy as well, because for me it's taking a bit of fun out of the game. And I was just curious if you kind of felt the same way. I feel like everybody is an amateur GM right now, every fan, at least. And I don't know, man, that doesn't
let you watch casually.
It doesn't let you watch casually. Yeah. And,
it can be very stressful if you're really into it. If you're like just an asshole who's really into it, I tended to gravitate that way. Like if I was in, I was really in. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where it can eat up your time, and you find yourself scoping out mediocre starting pitchers and like 8 a.m. on your phone, and you're thinking like, oh my God, this is how people wind up pushing shopping carts on the street, So it's just, I just ultimately decided that I would better allocate that time elsewhere. Now, whatever people enjoy, right? If that brings people out to the ballpark and people really get a kick out of that, then, more power to them. But I also think that it sort of makes the actual results of the real games almost kind of trivial to people, because we're coming into September and they're worried about how their guys are doing and everything. And they really maybe don't care all that much about the pennant race. Now, I guess you could argue that's a good thing. If you're a hardcore fan of a team that sucks, at least you have something to be excited and interested in September. But I think that I think in some ways I'm a better fan when I'm not playing, even though I don't pay as much daily attention. The attention that I do pay is to the actual games that matter, right? And not my imaginary stuff. So
general appreciation of it all.
Yeah. You can watch baseball without doing homework, it's like just enjoy it. Well, let's jump into the divisions, guys. I think we're just going to do division winners, and then we'll do the playoff picture and World Series as well. Let me ask before we get started. Did you guys pick wild cards as well? I did too. Okay. All right. Cool. So we'll do division winners and wild cards, and then we can talk about what our championship series or
I just have a World Series.
World Series, that'll work too. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, let's start with I'll just go alphabetically here with AL Central, not the best division in baseball, as the first one. Who you guys got here, man? It's not really that hard to pick this one.
Yeah,
but
it's the Indians to lose, basically.
Yeah. We all in agreement on that one, or anybody think the Twins have a shot?
I do think that the Twins could give them a run, but I think that the Indians will win it.
Right.
But wouldn't it be something, though, if they didn't?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Cleveland has been good for a few years now, but never quite good enough to get over the hump. You know, I mean, so they played the Cubs in the series a few years back, and they have a decent number of people still from that team in place. But yeah, they're not the sexiest first place team. You know, maybe it's because the rest of the division sucks. I mean, you can win this division. You know, 84 wins will get you this division. You know, I mean, maybe even fewer than that. So anyway, all right. So not the most exciting division to start out with, but pretty much Indians across the board. So going to the AL East, you know, we've got two superpowers that have kind of continued their recently reignited rivalry after, you know, kind of a few mediocre Yankees years. Now that rivalry is strong again, and those games are a lot of fun to watch. So who do you guys got here? Is it, you know, Yankees, Red Sox, or are you leaning, you know, is Tampa gonna surprise some people? Does anybody think
Yankees?
Yeah, I went Yankees. Yeah.
I went Red Sox. So yeah.
That was. Yeah, tough one.
Who you got, Gabe?
I've got the Yankees as well, okay. And I think the Yankees will probably have the American League's best record as well. I think it pains me to say it, but
it's funny we're saying this when the Red Sox won.
I know, right.
108 games last year, and then like they completely dominated the playoffs.
Right. So I don't really have a lot of scientific reasoning to back up why I think the Red Sox will finish in second place. I still have them as a wild card, actually. I've got them as a wild card, obviously.
Sure. Me as well. Yeah.
And they could take the division still. So,
Ricky, you're smarter and just sticking with it.
Well, I'm bored anyway, right? I'm just going. I think the America, for me, now that's the division that you wonder about. I think both the Central and the West are. It's just a matter of how much are the Indians, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, Gabe. But how much?
No worries.
And the Astros. I don't think. Right. I'm going to guess that we're all picking the Astros in the West. If somebody is out on a limb there, then that's going to be newsworthy, I think.
Levi knows something about Astros. The Rangers and you don't.
Right,
yeah. I've got the Astros in the West.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Same here.
The Red Sox as the wild card. Was that – well, who was your wild card, Ricky?
Well, we got two. Remember, we got two wild cards now, too, by the way.
There's two?
Yeah, there's two wild cards, man.
For like 6 years.
In each league?
That's how the Cubs got in the playoffs last year, Levi, I believe.
Well, I mean, I knew there was a wild card in each league, but I didn't think there was.
They got that wild card game now, you know, where they it's just a one and done thing. Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah.
And the Derek Lee retired, Levi.
Gonna have to hang up that jersey, I guess.
Right.
My wild cards in the American League are the Yankees, of course. I think whoever doesn't win between those two teams, and then I suppose that the favorite for the other spot probably is Tampa Bay with most people, but I'm going to pick the Angels. Okay. Mike Trout has made the playoffs once in his career, and one of these years, just by chance, you're going to have those guys step up and do something, and he's going to make the playoffs. So, hey, I'm going to guess that things break this way for call him California. Jesus, you and I are just going to drop off enjoy baseball in the 1980s, buddy.
The Los Angeles, California Angels.
No wild cards and the California Angels here. Old guy predictions, but yeah, I'm going to pick the Angels just because. I'm not really seeing any great fifth team in the American League. So let's say that they catch a few breaks and win enough games to creep in there.
Matt Sooner Harvey or later, you got to
make the playoffs with Mike Trout on your team, right? So
yeah, sure. Yeah. They also got did they get Real Muto as well? Did they get?
No, that was the Phillies.
That was a Philly. I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway,
they have Jonathan Lucroy at catcher though. And
the Angels too. Okay.
Yeah. He's not too shabby.
Yeah. Somehow the A's were good last year. I don't know if you guys.
They won like 96 games.
I know, right? That Moneyball thing works about every 6 or 7 years now.
Their starting pitching is shit though. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. I went with Boston and Tampa as my my wild cards. Tampa Bay, even though I never seem to know anybody on the team, they always seem to manage to win like 89 or 90 games for some reason. So, Kevin Kiermaier, I think, is the only player I know on Tampa. But they somehow get it done. I like. I don't know. They do a lot with a little, in terms of money, and they seem to kind of figure it out. They're kind of like the new A's, or like the A's of the the 90s.
The Gulf Coast. The Gulf Coast A's.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually went with the Twins for my
the
Red Sox and the Twins for my wild cards. And the Twins, just kind of is a little bit of a surprise there. Byron Buxton looks like maybe he puts it together this year. He was one of the top ranked, if not the top ranked prospect in baseball a few years ago, right on the heels of Jurickson Profar, who's now an A, who was also a bust. But Buxton, his glove has always been solid, but this spring training, for what that's worth, he's absolutely raking.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the year he puts it together. They have a really great starter in Jose Barrios.
Mm-hmm. They got Nelson Cruz for some pop too.
Michael Pineda coming off of Tommy John surgery, so maybe he can contribute to that team finally. Yeah. We'll see.
Levi, you got a second wild card just off the cuff, man? Just pulling one out there?
I'll just say Tampa, just to make it easy.
Right.
There's not a lot of. I'm having a hard time finding a fifth American League team. There's not a real consensus pick. You know what I mean? But
yeah, it could be interesting. Anybody could really sneak in there,
right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on, guys, to the NL. The NL here, and we'll start with the Central. Probably, I think baseball's most competitive division. The Cubs competition has really increased over the last 12 months. Just 2 years ago we had Ricky on the podcast, and I think all of us were saying, it'd be, if the Cubs won the division by fewer than 10 or 12 games, it would really be something. Whereas, starting the season, they're, among a lot of prognosticators, they're not really even the favorite to win the division. So, Levi, I want to start with you, man. What do you make of the Cubs this year? They're still good, but are they good enough?
Right. I think they're good enough to compete within the division. The homer in me is probably going to end up taking them all the way, but it's a really tough year in that division. Honestly, I've got it down on my sheet to where I think the Central and the two wild card spots are either going to be the Cubs, the Cardinals, and the Brewers, and I think you could switch them around in those three spots.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I was dealing with the same dilemma when I was picking this one.
And so, I'm gonna, if I have to nail it down, I'd probably say I'll take the Cardinals to win the division and the Cubs and Brewers to be the wild card.
Okay. And then with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, I don't think either of those teams are going to take the division by any means, but they're not teams you can really just beat up on anymore. You know what I mean? They're not, it doesn't look like they're going to be easy wins.
Right.
Even if you are still ahead of those teams, particularly Cincinnati. For some reason, they had a really busy offseason, and they've kind of put together, I think, a pretty interesting looking team.
Eugenio Suarez, man, don't underestimate.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think they have quietly one of baseball's best players in Joey Votto as well.
He's one of the best players of his generation.
Oh, I mean, he's just a stud, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say quietly in the sense that he doesn't, he doesn't get the attention of Trout or Harper or some of the guys that are a few years younger than him. But he's a stud.
There's not a lot of Joey Votto references probably on Pardon the Interruption.
No.
Or First Take.
So, Ricky, who do you got? I mean, you're a Cubs fan as well, man. What do you make of the landscape this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you guys have covered it quite accurately. The division is on paper maybe the most competitive division in baseball. You could argue for the NL East as well, as you noted earlier. But I would say that certainly the Cubs, the Cardinals, the Brewers all have a reason to go into this season feeling pretty confident. I know that the pundits are down on the Cubs, and the projections are. I think it was it Pacoda that projected the Cubs to be like 80 and 82, or something pretty grim like that. But you got to think that you're going to get a better Chris Bryant this year, and I just feel like the pedigree of the Cubs, even though they faded last year and it just all kind of fell apart there within a couple of days, right?
Getting Darvish back will help a lot.
Everything, yeah. If you Darvish can be healthy, last year it's almost like you kind of forget about him, right? He was such a crap out last year that if he comes back and he's the same guy that he was a few years ago, that would obviously be a huge boost. I'm going to pick the Cubs just kind of off of pedigree, the fact that they've been there consistently and they've got a winning culture and atmosphere, and but yeah, you could stack those three teams up in any order, and it would be hard for me to argue with you. The East is similar in terms of being hard to make a pick. So the Nationals, the Phillies, the Braves, the Mets. You could argue for any of those four teams. I'm going to take the Braves. In the NL East, somebody's got to win. They could just as easily finish fourth, probably, as win that division. Over in the West, I'm going to take the Rockies.
Yeah, good pick.
To win
Wow.
That's I guess that's my bold take for tonight. But I'm gonna take the Rockies. I think that they could surprise the Dodgers. Kershaw's already dinged up, and I'm kind of sad about Clayton Kershaw because he's been one of my favorite pitchers for a long time, and I think that the old body over the last couple of years we've seen it, and I think we're starting to see it maybe escalate some, that the body is kind of breaking down on him, and I hope that I'm wrong about that, but that's something that concerns me with the Dodgers. So I'll take the Braves, the Cubs, and the Rockies to win their divisions. I'll take the Cardinals and Dodgers as my wild cards.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah.
I don't think I said my NL East pick was. I'm going to pick the Phillies. I think they can make it, and as far as if the Dodgers, don't win it, I think that's a good pick with the one you said there, Ricky.
They've got a lot of bats in that lineup, even with losing Carlos Gonzalez, who I guess just signed a couple days ago with Cleveland. I think
you're right.
Which, like, I have to admit, like, I didn't know the dude had fallen off that much. Right. I thought he was still kind of raking. I don't pay that close of attention to the Rockies. I know they have big hitters, and they've had that core of hitters in place for a few years now with Blackmon and Arenado.
They lost LeMahieu as well.
Yeah, and LeMahieu's not there anymore either. But they still have a good offense, and they might finally, the Rockies, have the pitching, which is something that basically has eluded them since they arrived in baseball, 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah. Freeland might be the best pitcher you never heard of.
Right. And I think John Gray actually has got a lot of potential to be really good too. So, they've never really had that ace pitcher. They had Ubaldo Jimenez for like a season and a half, was a stud, and then other than that, you got to go back to like David Meade or something.
Mike Hampton.
Yeah, Mike Hampton, right? I want to jump back for a second because Ricky, and Levi were talking about the Central. You guys aren't going to like this, but I think the Cardinals are going to be really good this year. I mean, they've had a poor spring training. They haven't, which take that for what it's worth. The bats haven't really started yet for them. Goldschmidt just hit his first home run, I think, a day ago or so. Wow. But man, sorry, Levi, they look good, man. I mean, like on paper, at least.
On paper, they do. That's why I picked them.
Yeah.
When they look out for Harrison Bader, man. He's a stud.
Absolutely.
Flat leather.
I like a bad spring training. If I'm a fan of a team, I want to see them go 10-20 or whatever, because you can't take that stuff with you from Arizona and Florida. Okay, so get your outs out of the way in spring training, and then come out swinging, because I've seen a lot of teams through the years who tear through spring training, and then you look up at the end of the first couple of weeks and they're 4-8 or whatever.
Right.
So,
I think the Marlins are in third place right now.
Right.
Well, there you go.
And that's out of like 15 teams.
The fish are blowing it early. They're just getting it all. Right. But anyway, and I'll take one of my wild cards. Then comes from the Central. I'll take the Cubs as one of the wild cards.
I have the same for myself.
Yeah, the Brewers, it's tough. I mean, they could win the division. Hell, I don't know.
They were so close last year too.
I looked at the rotation last night, and to me, like, they might need to pull off a trade for another starter to really like put them over the top. I don't know who's. Maybe they could bring back Greinke. I'd assume he'll be available, right? Is he injured? I don't know. He's still in Arizona, right? I mean, I forgot about the guy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if Jimmy Nelson kind of gets his groove back, that'll help. Then they kind of have an ace. Yeah.
But if he doesn't, or just I think for insurance purposes, another starter could help them a lot. They could. They're in win now mode, so I'm sure they could cobble some prospects together and pull off a big midseason trade for a starter if they needed to.
Is Matt Garza still playing? Maybe they could get him back.
Right there with Matt Clement. But anyway, so I'll take the Cubs. So I'm sorry, what did we go in the Central? We went Levi and I with the Cardinals. Ricky,
Cardinals.
Did you take the Cardinals too?
No, he took the Cubs.
I'm riding with the Cubs. Yeah, I'll be the homer. Yeah.
And my wild card was Cubs Brewers.
Okay, and then Jonathan, you took Cardinals.
I took Cardinals to win, and Cubs was wild card.
Okay, all right. Well, moving on to the East. I know, Ricky, you took DC, right?
I took Atlanta.
You took Atlanta. I'm sorry. Shit. All right. Guys.
Yeah. So
I've been writing nothing down.
Because,
all right.
I mean, that's a classic case of where you think the young kids overperformed. That they were ahead of schedule last year, and you think they might fall off, kind of like the Astros did a few years ago before they made the World Series.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that could easily happen. I mean, it really could. I think the NL East, and as I have proven in my now fifth year on this, the 4 years that we have behind us, I hope nobody's going back and checking my record, because I can that sucks.
We erase it mid-season.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, erase the master of this by mid-season, because it's easy to sit here and appear confident when you're making a pick in March. And I'm telling you right now, most of the time I would have better luck throwing a dart at the wall.
Yeah. I look at this division, and again, I think you're right. It could be any of the four teams minus the Marlins. I even with losing Harper, the Nationals still have a pretty good team.
High rotation, man.
Yeah, they brought in Patrick Corbin. Yeah. They still got Strasburg, and obviously Scherzer is, I think now arguably baseball's best pitcher.
Yeah,
I would say so. With Kershaw, maybe. Well, he's in the conversation too, but the injuries.
Not this year.
But but Yeah, Scherzer's just a stud, man. So yeah, if they've got him, they've got a shot. They always kind of disappoint. They're not really, they're definitely like a peter out in the playoffs team. But I'll pick them to win that division because Philadelphia. I thought about it, and the Mets, still not sure. Kind of been the same storyline for the last 4 seasons or so with the Mets. It depends on the rotation's performance and stability. So yeah,
I think the Nationals, dude, with Rendon and Juan Soto, had one of the greatest teenage years in the history of baseball.
Yeah.
Last year, and then Anthony Rendon's probably one of the most underrated players in baseball.
Yeah.
That's a formidable lineup.
Trey Turner, right?
And your old boy Adam Eaton.
Right. Yeah, who's actually done fairly well for that. He was injured one year, but he's still a quality player. So yeah, I think they win the division. Yeah. Jonathan, who'd you pick?
I picked the Nationals, and this discussion is making me change my World Series pick.
Okay, all right, we still have time. We're not there yet.
Noted.
Well, let's go to the West. I know Ricky picked the Rockies, which I think is a good. I like that pick. I've got the Rockies as my second wild card. So if I'm not mistaken, were the Cubs and the Rockies were the wild card game last year, right?
Correct.
So I'm picking a repeat of that. I'm going to take Colorado as the second wild card, and the Dodgers kind of being the same story as they've been for the last few years, winning the division but not winning the World Series. I haven't revealed my World Series pick, but I don't think it will be the Dodgers. So I'll pick LA winning the division, Colorado taking the second wild card in the West.
All right. Hey, I'm taking the Nationals. I'm sorry, for the East, and then the Dodgers for the West.
Okay.
And then the Mets and the Cubs in the wild card.
Ooh, going with the Mets, huh? All right.
Yeah. I like the transactions that they made in the offseason. They're catching a lot of flack for the Robinson Cano deal, but Cano's gonna be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, sure.
Still got a little bit left in him. Jed Lowry's pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, if DeGrom, pitches, at 80% of what he did last year, he's still going to be great.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And if Syndergaard and Matt's put it together for a full season,
we got Wheeler too. Yeah. So it's not completely unbelievable. Levi, did you pick the West yet?
I picked the Dodgers.
Okay, picking the Dodgers. All right, cool. So going on now, let's just jump right to the World Series, guys. I think we've got all of our picks in here. Ricky, who do you got in the series, man? Who takes it home in 2019?
Well, to me, once you get to the playoffs, it's Billy Beane said years ago that the playoffs are a crapshoot. And it may not be entirely true, but once you get into a short series, anything can happen. And I'm going to tell you a rotation that I really like a lot is Cleveland's. And I am going to take the Indians to go to the World Series. And am I giving you my NL team now too?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take the Indians to go to the World Series. I'm going to take the Rockies. I'm going to ride that Rockies pick all the way into the World Series, and I'm going to take the Cleveland Indians to beat the Colorado Rockies in 7.
This is a ratings nightmare for MLB.
People actually just clicked off the podcast. So bad. They're not even going to stick around.
They lost in ratings to the Sound of Music Live.
Sound of Music Live or like a Bills at Jaguars preseason game gets a higher ratings,
Yeah. So sometimes life's disappointing like that, So like, right. I'm gonna pick that.
I'm tuning in.
Answer.
Yeah. I'm not down for that, man. Shit, man. If I can go, guys, I'm high on Colorado as well. Hey, get it? But anyway. Yeah, man, I got the Rockies in the World Series too. I think.
All right.
And this is not this is not the most rational answer, but I think they're kind of due. I like the Arenado is I think the National League's best player. And like I said, the rotation is starting to come together. They're in win now mode. So let's say a trade for a starter, another starter is feasible. I think they can do that. They can put together some prospects to do that. The offense, they've got like 4 or 5 guys, even after losing Cargo and LeMahieu, that can still just rake. So yeah, I'm in with the Rockies, man, with you for the World Series in the series. And shit, man, I'm going to take it a step further. I think those guys are going to win the World Series.
Damn.
I know. Right? What have I been spoken?
Thunder, man. I was the provocative guy until you came.
I know.
Guy who doesn't really believe in
Hopper.
Yeah. So
who are they playing?
I've got them. Not an exciting picker. I've got them beating the Yankees because hey, I love seeing somebody beat the Yankees. So, right. So yeah, I'll go Colorado over Yankees. Let's say it goes to 7 games, man. Why not? Yeah.
Wow. So I just looked it up on VegasInsider.com. The Rockies are 50 to 1 odds.
Okay.
The Indians are 12 to 1. Yeah.
I'll put 20 on the Rockies if it was. I don't know if you know a good book maker. I'm not much of a gambler, but I would throw 20 at those odds.
This website seems reputable. I think we could just go ahead and put the bet in there. Yeah. Nice. Wow. All right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Go ahead, Levi.
Okay. I think I'm going to, in tribute of my father who passed away last year, I think I'm going to do a Yankees-Cubs World Series.
All righty. That'll be a good. That'll be. That would get 2 iconic franchises there. Yeah.
That's the antidote to the shit show that I proposed. Yankees Cubs. That America wants that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I like it. Now, who do you got winning, Levi?
I want to say Cubs, but I think the Yankees would beat the Cubs in a 7-game series.
All right.
Yankees are so. I mean, like they could win 110 games. I mean, they're.
Yeah.
Severino's out till May, so maybe it's already fallen off the rails for him. So.
Oh, right, he is hurt, isn't he? Yeah.
But they do have the best odds. They have 6 to 1 odds according to this website.
I always got to think they're a trade, a big midseason trade is doable for them. So take that into consideration. So yeah, right, Greinke. I don't think Greinke will finish the season with the Diamondbacks. Let's put it that way.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the. I did have the Dodgers over the Yankees in 5, but then we started talking up the Nats, and now I'm taking the Nats over the Yankees in 6.
Yes. I like it, but I've been burned by that Nats pick before.
I know. I think I picked them every year for the last 5 years. But now
this is their year, damn
I'm looking for the irony angle on it with, Harper goes away and then they make a run. And maybe this is it. And to see the Yankees losing the World Series would be nice. I looked it up. We've gone 6 years without the Yankees or the Cardinals in the World Series, which is the longest stretch since the mid-'90s that we've gone without either of those 2 teams making the World Series. So relish it while you can.
Mm-hmm.
The golden age.
Nice.
Nationals at 12 to 1 odds, by the way.
Okay. All right. Well, nice picks, guys. I like it. Any, aside from Mike Trout, anybody you think is going to have kind of a monster year? Any kind of MVP type predictions? I know those things are a little bit harder, but anybody you think that's out there that aside from Mike Trout might win the MVP?
Right.
Yeah, like breaking out.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. I think Mookie has another giant year, and but ultimately I think Shin-Soo wins his first MVP.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Bold. That's my boy. That's my boy, man. Yeah, he might be on a last place team, but yeah, he'll get there.
First ever.
Yeah. I really like Charlie Blackmon as maybe a dark horse MVP candidate.
Bounce back.
Yeah, like a bounce back year. Yeah. Arenado is definitely a safe bet, and I don't think he has won it yet. I think he maybe finished second last year.
Dude's a stud.
He's due. Yeah,
I was going to say that's my pick. Yeah, I would say he might get his finally.
You know, we could talk. You know, Trout is far and away baseball's best player, but there's probably and we've mentioned most of the names tonight. There's probably about 7 or 8 guys that could vie for second place. You know, that can make a strong argument for second.
Sure.
You know, you could say Arenado, you could say Bryant.
Betts.
Betts. You could say Votto even. You know, I mean, you could.
If Harper feels up for it this year, maybe he will.
Right. Yeah, Harper potentially. You know. Yeah. So there's a lot of Trout far and away, but just there's exciting a lot of exciting players that are right behind him. So
yeah, there are for sure. I think Alex Bregman is
another guy I forgot. Bregman. I think he's Altuve as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the National League, I think it'll be fun to see how Ronald Acuna performs this year. He had a pretty solid rookie year, and it would be not out of the realm of possibility that he could post a monster year. So
absolutely.
He would be a dark horse MVP candidate for me in the NL.
Freddie Freeman's really good too, man. You know, I mean, that's another guy that maybe might not be quite as strong as those guys that we just mentioned, but he's quietly developed into one of the National League's best players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
without question, my pick. I think you almost have to pick Trout. It's almost irresponsible not to at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would take Trout in the American League, even though that's the most boring prediction ever, and I'd probably go with Arenado in the NL. If the Rockies are going to be as good as you and I think they will, Gabe,
right?
It's going to be big years for Blackmon and Arenado, almost definitely. So I think either of those guys are capable of being the MVP.
Absolutely. With Trout, he's going to finish first or second because that's what he's finished every year since he's been in the big leagues, basically.
Jeez. Ridiculous.
You know? Yeah. So
you could argue for sure that he should have about 4 MVPs by now.
Right.
There's a couple of times he came in second where it was kind of like, So it's kind of crazy to think how many MVPs he could have if the votes had broken just a little bit better for him.
It's like it's like we're watching Mickey Mantle again. You know, I mean, it's
he's already a Hall of Famer. Actually.
Yeah, right.
Like, according to the numbers, he really is already a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's hard to imagine it. Doesn't he have the highest WAR compiled through his age?
Like
more than anybody. And I know that Ruth, was a pitcher there for probably, exclusively a pitcher or mostly a pitcher for probably a couple more years, and then would have been ideal if they had known how he was going to hit. But yeah, I mean, Trout is on a trajectory where legit he could be one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best players of all time. Based on numbers, as hard as that is to imagine, because you think Willie Mays and Ty Cobb, guys like that, and it's hard to imagine that they would have to step aside for Mike Trout.
Ted Williams.
Ted Williams, exactly. So Mike Trout could be the all-time leader in WAR by the time he's done. He's certainly got a chance, and I think that deal that they're signing him to is, I mean, if there's ever been a bargain, anything in life that was $430 million, this is that, because I'm telling you, if he keeps putting up 9 WAR a year for the next 5 or 6 years, I mean, that's what, $75 million worth of value. So even if and how much are contracts going to be worth 10 years from now? So even if he's winding down in years 10, 11, and 12, it's not really going to be that bad probably because you got to figure contracts are going to get even crazier. So I think that's an awesome deal for the Angels, and obviously Trout did pretty well for himself too. So
yeah.
I won't shed any tears for him, but I'm sure on the open market he would have gotten a larger contract than that, I think.
Yeah.
Probably 500. Yeah.
If I'm the Angels, I mean, whatever it takes. You know what I mean? That's.
They've got to put players with him. You know, because the thing of it is they have. I don't want to be overly dramatic and go like all hot take or whatever, but they've wasted a lot of good years. You know, how many years has he finished first or second? You know, and they've kind of wasted it. They haven't won a playoff series in the Mike Trout era. Mm-hmm. So. And I believe they've only been to the playoffs one time. So
they got swept by the Royals.
And they got swept. So they haven't even won a playoff game in the Mike Trout era. And so, you look at it, it's really kind of sad that you've got this, like you say, a modern Mickey Mantle, maybe like Mickey Mantle version 2.0, right?
Right.
Actually better than Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
Arguably, at least. And they're going it feels like they go 80 and 82 every year.
Right.
You know, what are they doing? So it's nice that they've made the commitment to keep him, but they've got to figure out a way to get a better core of players around him. And a good place to start would probably be to stop giving Albert Pujols 500 plus at bats. You know? Because it's terrible. I was playing MLB The Show the other day, as I was telling you guys, and Albert Pujols' running rating, his speed rating on MLB The Show is 0.
Does he actually run with a limp?
I don't even know how he moves.
There's a cane. He has a cane.
It's brutal, and he is, I guess, consensus, arguably at least, the slowest player in baseball. Yeah. You know, slower than your backup catcher. It's just. It's hard to watch, because he's really held on too long. I'm not saying that he's useless. I'm sure that he could help you if you used him judiciously against left-handers and stuff like that. But to be in the lineup every day, grounding into double plays every other night,
him out of there.
Get him out of there. You're really undermining this generational talent by surrounding him with that kind of a core around him. And I guess it's just an example of, they're trying to justify the money that they paid him. And sometimes it's better just to accept the sunk cost and move on.
Because he's hit his milestones, right? Like, there's no more reason to really play him for the purpose of so that he can hit like 600 home runs, or because he's done all that.
Right. He's got 3,000 hits, and he's got
a few World Series rings.
Yeah, he's got World Series rings, and unfortunately, I don't think that he's going to be getting a World Series ring in Anaheim. So I think you got to get him out of there and get somebody else in the lineup. That frustrates me, and I'm not even an Angels fan. If I were an Angels fan, I think that would be really hard to accept that every year you've got this amazing, amazing player, and basically he's the difference between your team winning 72 games and 80 games every year. It's just it's almost kind of criminal what they're doing with Mike Trout's prime. So I hope that they get some players around him, because it's such a waste for baseball too. Mike Trout should be on the October stage.
Right, absolutely.
At least every other year, that's good for baseball. So, so that's just, I think that's disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, shit, man, good stuff, fellas. I go on all night here with our buddy from Super 70 Sports. I want to remind everybody, you can follow Ricky at Super 70 Sports, and then also check. I assume, Ricky, it's on all the podcast for Super 70 Sports is on iTunes and, all your favorite podcasting apps. So check that out there. Do you got any well, I guess, we'll let it be a surprise. We're going to see if you had anybody kind of lined up you're excited about on the podcast. But
well, the podcast, unfortunately, I don't get podcasts posted as frequently as I would like. It's pretty irregular, which which doesn't do a lot for building a consistent following, because I pop up once every 2 months with a podcast.
Join the club.
Yeah, when you got a life, right? It's kind of hard to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully as the year goes on, I'll have a few people on there. I've got some fairly big names from the 70s and 80s that I'm hoping to line up, and I won't set the expectations too high by saying who they are, but some guys that were really prominent players in the late 70s, early 80s era that I'd like to get on the podcast this year. So I'll keep my fingers crossed that we can bring that to fruition.
Outstanding. Nice. Cool. Well, we look forward to that, and all the big hits that are coming out of Super 70 Sports as well. Look forward to some that kind of Super 70 Sports world and brand really just to keep growing. So outstanding, Ricky. Keep up the great work, man.
Guys, hey, likewise. I love what you guys do. It's always a blast to be on the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing how wrong I am this year, and then I'm looking forward to coming back in a year and being wrong again.
Well, we look forward to those mistakes. So anyway, I want to remind everybody you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RockInChew. That's rock as in. Now you're messing with the son of a bitch, Nazareth. And also, you can follow us on like us on Facebook, and you can find all of the Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Chew archives at rockchew.com. Also, please follow Ricky at Super 70 Sports, one of the best moves you'll make on Twitter. And until next time, I hope everybody has a good opening day and a great start to the 2019 baseball season. Have a good night, fellas.
Peace.